Hey everybody, Charlie Stevens here. Thank you so much for tuning in to another guitar lesson. Today, I'd like to teach you about syncopation. So what is syncopation? Well, syncopation is when we accent musical material that would normally fall in places that are not accented. Okay, so it's where we emphasize certain places in the measure that would usually be structurally weak, but we accent them. Okay, so like a lot of things in music theory, it makes sense to think about this in written music, right? In terms of written music, this is how we were codifying a lot of this music theory, and we were writing it down. So if I played something for you like that intro thing, right? You can just kind of hear that, and you hear that certain beats are more important than others. Okay, kind of a reggae thing there. Reggae music features a lot of syncopation in the rhythm guitar, so that's why I was doing that little strum pattern there. Now, if I were to hand you a piece of paper with music on it hundreds of years ago, you wouldn't be able to hear that. You wouldn't know how it sounded, so you wouldn't instantly pick up on some of this stuff. So we need ways to make that apparent, right? So normally in music, it's assumed that there are certain weak beats and certain strong beats, okay? Typically, beat 1 is the strongest beat, and the next strongest beat is beat 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so those are going to be more accented naturally. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Or we could even think about this same thing in eighth notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Okay, see how right there on the beats and the off beats, the ands, those are not supposed to be stressed. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, right? So syncopation is when we turn that on its head and we do emphasize the off beats. 1 and, so here, twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. So I'm putting a syncopated clap behind that now, which adds an emphasis to those offbeat places, right? So syncopation is very cool. It's something that's been used in Western classical music for quite some time, but when we get into American art forms like jazz, we use it quite a bit. Reggae uses it a lot, as I mentioned. So super cool thing, super important thing that will help us have access to way more rhythms. Now that we've learned about the dotted quarter note and the eighth note rest, this will really allow us to use syncopation because we can use one of those things on one of the beats that's supposed to be important, and that will tell us not to play that beat, and we can put a different note right on one of these off beats, which will produce syncopation. Okay, so this is a pretty deep topic, and it can get pretty advanced. We're going to stay pretty surface level today and just do some entry-level understanding of what it is. And now, rather than me explaining it to you like this, which hopefully was helpful, but also can be a little bit of a confusing way to understand it, I think the best way is to see some examples of it. Okay, so we're going to play through a couple examples on the guitar and see how that looks in standard music notation and hear what this syncopation sounds like. Okay, so in example number 1, we're just going to play our open high E string, and we're going to play all of the offbeats. Okay, this is going to be very similar to the one we did in the lesson on the eighth note rest. Please check that out if you haven't seen it. But in that one, we had put an eighth note on the beat, followed by a rest on the offbeats. Kind of the annoying one, right? This one is going to be a little annoying too, so fair warning, but just as a way of understanding this, I think it makes sense to see what happens if we kind of flip that around. Instead of having the eighth note followed by an eighth rest, we're going to do it the opposite. We're going to have an eighth rest first, followed by an eighth note on the off beat. And that gives us syncopation, because now we have nothing on the downbeat, and we do have a note on the off beat, right? So that would sound like this. Example number 1. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay? So for me, that one's not as annoying as the other one that's on the beat. This one is like a little cooler or something. But the only reason that you know that syncopation is because I counted it off, right? I'm over here tapping my foot. I'm still imagining the pick goes down on those places where my foot taps down, and then I'm using an up pick on all of these off beats too. So I'm really feeling that beat still and playing against it. But me counting it off is how you can hear where things are supposed to be, and then you can hear how it's kind of on the offbeat. If we don't have any context to that, it will just sort of sound like the beat has moved to a different place. So the interesting thing about syncopation is we need a little bit of non-syncopation established, or else we kind of lose the effect. We won't really feel it as syncopation. It will just seem like the beat's somewhere else. Okay? So yeah, pretty fun stuff to get into. Okay, great. So that was example number 1. And example number 2, we're just going to hang out on this high E string here. And we're going to play 1 and 2 and then we have a tie. So there's a tie on the and of 2 connected to the 8th note on beat 3. So that means we're not going to play the 8th note on beat 3, right? They're tied together for the same value, so we don't play it again. Watch my lesson on ties if you need a refresher on that or if you haven't seen that one yet. Yeah, so basically we're not going to play anything on beat 3. It's going to be like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, where we go down, up on every place in the measure with 8th notes, except for on beat 3. We won't have to strike there. We'll let the thing that happens on the and of 2 be large enough that we won't even need to strike the string again on beat 3. Okay, so essentially we'll miss that down and we'll be ready to come back up on the and of 3. Okay, let's try that together nice and slow. Example number 2. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Great. Okay, see that? I just missed 3, right? That one we're going to see again. We'll put that one to chords. That's a pretty good rhythm because 3 is supposed to be sort of one of our important ones. 1 and 3 are some of the most important beats of our measure usually. Well, I guess I shouldn't say most important, but structurally they're supposed to be accented a little more. So in a way you could say that. So when we don't play anything on beat 3, we get some syncopation basically. Okay? All right, in example number 3, it's going to look a little bit different in music, in the written music, but it's going to sound exactly the same as the example we just played. Okay, so in this one we have an 8th note on beat 1, another 8th note on the and of beat 1, then we have an 8th note on 2, then we have a quarter note on the and of beat 2. Okay, so that is a quarter note. That's basically 2 8th notes, right? So that takes up the and of beat 2. It also takes up 3. Well, hey, that's the same thing the tie did, right? Just 2 different ways of representing this visually on the page. And I wanted to show you both ways, and I'm glad I did, because as I was putting together these examples, I wanted to do a few with strums as well. And I noticed that my computer program that I was using would not let me use one of these methods, so I had to use the other method. So it's great that we know about both of them. We want to know about both of them because we'll see them both. But really they're the same thing, okay? So in this one we have a quarter note on the and of beat 2. That's going to create some syncopation by having us not strike the string on beat 3, okay? But really, practically, exact same thing we just did, okay? Down, up, down, up, down, up. Cool? All right, let's give it a try. Example number 3. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, I'm even really trying to be a little bit overemphasizing my down, so I don't know if you can see this at home, but I'm going down past the string on 3. And, as I get more and more comfortable with this, I don't do any additional motions that I don't deem necessary. But when you're getting the hang of this, I totally recommend doing that, because you're still, going down where 3 would go, because we want to come up on the and of 3. So letting your hand go all the way down but missing the string is really great practice for still feeling where that down pick would go should you need to put a note on 3, right? But yeah, over time it just kind of gets more comfortable, and hopefully you don't really have to over exaggerate any motions. But at first, as you're getting the hang of this, go ahead and do it, okay? For me, it was really helpful in getting the hang of all this stuff. All right, now we're going to move on to example number 4. So we have an 8th note on beat 1. Then the 8th note on the and of beat 1 is tied. It's tied to the 8th note on beat 2, which is also tied to the 8th note on the and of beat 2, right? And then we have a quarter note on beat 3 and 2 8th notes on beat 4. Okay? So yeah, a lot of tying going on here. But again, this is going to yield some syncopation because we're not going to have anything on beat 2. Okay? All right, let's give this a try. Example number 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Cool. All right. In example number 5, it's going to be the same as example number 4, but without the use of ties. So we had 3 8th notes that were all tied together in example number 4. Well, do we have a symbol that equals 3 8th notes? Well, let's see. 3 8th notes, how many is that? Well, we know that 2 8th notes equals a quarter note, but we had 3 8th notes. So how would we do that? Well, we could add a dot to the quarter note, right? And that would be the same value as 3 8th notes. So in example number 5, same thing, but now using dotted quarter note instead of ties. Okay, please check out the lesson on the dotted quarter note if you're not familiar with that. But exactly the same thing that we just did. Ready? Let's try it together. Example number 5. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Excellent. Okay, so notice I'm doing less motion with that one, right? It doesn't really make sense to follow through all that stuff because I'm resting for I shouldn't even say resting because we don't have any rests in this, but I don't need to pick for sort of a long time. So it's okay to kind of let the arm motion stop a little bit. For me, I noticed I wasn't really going down for where that 2 was and stuff. But if you'd like to help you really keep track of where everything is, again, that's a great thing to do. Okay, now I'd like to see what some of these rhythms look like when applied to chords. Now you're free to use any and every chord that you know to do this, to practice with this, but I decided to use this G5 just because this is a really easy one for me to mute. This is one we've learned on the channel. That's one reason that that I chose it, but also I think this is a really easy one for me to mute. So when we have these rests, I can kind of make the guitar quiet. That's why I chose this one. So this index finger isn't doing anything when I'm holding the G5. So it's ready to kind of go down and touch the guitar. I let these fingers, I relax them, the pressure on them, but you can hear there's still a sound when I do that. That's from the open strings. Okay, so as I relax the pressure, I kind of put this finger down. I kind of relax the whole hand and allow this finger to touch too. Okay, very good practice for getting in control of your sound. We only want our chords to be, as long as we want them to be. So we need to be able to mute them at a moment's notice to really help our rhythm playing. So if this is a little challenging, that's okay. It can be at first when you're thinking about this. Wait, I have to relax this finger, but put that one down. It can be a little bit challenging if you're brand new to it, but very important thing. So just go nice and slow and try to get the hang of it. And my tip for this is to let the ear be your guide. I mean, I know I explained what the fingers are doing, but to be honest with you, I do not think about that in a technical way. I think about the sound I'm trying to get, and I let that little, difference of my hand lightening up in tension and the finger going down. I try to let that happen on its own, okay? As opposed to some of this picking stuff we've talked about where sometimes I really lock into the technique and go, hey, I need to do an up right there after beat 3. On the end of beat 3, I need to really focus and make sure I hit that. So sometimes I am kind of technically minded about certain things. Things like this, I'm usually not. I'm usually trying to go by ear, and that works better for me. But what is happening is exactly what I said. We're releasing, and we're also touching the other open strings so they mute as well. Okay, so example number 6 is the same as example number 1, but we're just going to do it with a chord. Okay, so these are all the offbeat chops. So 1 and 2. Cool? Let's give it a try together, okay? Example number 6. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, so I'm doing all ups, okay? This is kind of like the reggae style, but sometimes when we only need to do the ups, we actually break the rules of alternate picking because I can get a stronger sound on the down. So if I had to do downstrokes and then occasionally upstrokes, I'd want to follow the rules where the downstrokes are with down picks on the downbeat and the upstrokes fall on the upbeats. But since I only have upbeats to worry about here, I can actually get a louder tone by doing all downs on these places, okay? So let's try it with all downs now. Same example, just all downstrokes, okay? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Cool, right? All right, so that's kind of like the reggae stuff. All downs, even though they're on the off beat. Okay, so we'll get more into specific stuff like that. I just want to give you a very general understanding of what syncopation is and a few examples of how we can use it. Okay, great. Let's try another one. Okay, example number 7 is very similar to an example we saw earlier, only with a chord. So basically we just won't play anything on beat 3. 1 and 2 and 4 and. Okay, this was the same one we saw in example 2 and 3 were both like this. Now, when I went to write this example, number 7, I wanted to use ties, and this program wouldn't let me use it. And at first I went, darn, how am I going to do this? And then I remembered, oh yeah, we have this other way of writing it, right? So this is more similar to the way 3 looks, but the rhythm is the same as example 2 and 3, and here in 7, okay? So yeah, 1 and 2 and nothing on 3 and 4 and. Okay, so we're just going to hold the G5 and do that same rhythm from earlier. Let's try it together. Example number 7. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Awesome. I like that one. That's a very important one that I've noticed from songs that happens a lot. A lot of times we don't put anything on beat 3, but we wait until just after, and it creates this kind of cool effect. So this will really open up our rhythm playing possibilities. We had done that lesson where we looked at all the eighth notes and quarter notes, and we tried different combinations. I think it's called strumming variations, if you want to check that lesson out. And we were a little bit more limited then because we sort of had to put something on every beat. Now that we have syncopation, we don't need to put something on every beat, and we can leave one off, like in this case, beat 3. And yeah, you'll start to hear this in a lot of songs. This will really open up the kind of stuff that we were limited by before. We won't be now. We'll be able to do cool stuff. All right, in example number 8, this one is going to be the same as example number 4 and 5, only with a G chord. So it looks more like example 5 because, again, they wouldn't let me use the ties with this slash notation for some reason. So if you work at Guitar Pro and, ask them why we can't use that ties on slash notation. But anyway, luckily we don't need them because we can use the dotted quarter note. Okay, so example number 8 is the same as example number 5, but just holding down a G chord. So that's 1 and, nothing on 2 or the and of 2, right? That and of 1 was worth 3 beats, so it ate up all of 2 and the and of 2. Then we get 3, 4, and. Okay, let's give that a try together. Example number 8. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. All right, that was example number 8. Great. In our last example, example number 9, we're going to go 1, 2 and 4. 1, 2 and 4. Again, we're just sort of leaving out beat 3. That's the kind of characteristic thing that makes this syncopation, is that beat 3 is nothing going on. We're just going to be holding there. And this is just a nice one that has a long note on beat 1 and a long note on beat 4. Gives us some variety into the eighth notes that we have too. So this one's a little bit similar to example number 7, but we have some longer notes now, so a little bit more variety to play around with here. Let's give it a try together, okay? Example number 9. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Awesome. So like I said, you can try all these examples with whatever chord you want. Maybe D minor. If you watched my lesson a few weeks ago on D minor, then that might be a new chord that you're working on practicing. And that might be a good one for you to hold down while you try to experiment with these different rhythms. Or maybe it's not D minor. Maybe it's whatever chord you're working on. Maybe some of your chords are coming along and you don't even think about it, you just go to them. But maybe there's that one chord that you always take a little bit extra time getting to. You can make that your project for the week to get more comfortable with the chord and also get more comfortable with these rhythms at the same time. Okay? So this is a very sort of intro to syncopation, but it's really important. We'll see little bits of syncopation here and there, and it's difficult to play cool strumming patterns on songs without ever using it. So I'm really glad that we've made it far enough in the course to talk about syncopation. Really hope you enjoyed watching this lesson. As always, you can download all the musical examples for free at my website. And if you're enjoying this course, please subscribe. All right, thanks again for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in another guitar lesson really soon. Thanks again. Bye.